What's up guys, KPlaysHere here. That video on the pocket horn problem certainly got you guys talking in the comments, didn't it? I mainly wanted to share my 2 cents on the current talking points involving hunting horn in the greater community, and I guess I really got the pennies flowing from the rest of you. Wasn't expecting that at all, but I guess I'm happy about it because the awareness and conversation about the topic is exactly what I wanted. Today though, we're going to bring it back to more positive predictions. I want to talk less about what I don't want to see happen in Wilds and more about what I do, because the state of the weapon going forward could look very different than it has in the past. If you guys caught the Wilds wishlist theories I started a while back, you'll know that I had quite the set of asks for hunting horn. If you haven't seen those or need a refresher, I definitely suggest giving them a watch because it is eerie how many things were either super close or spot on once we finally got the reveal more recently. I mean, let's just look at a few things really quick. A return to the old school song mechanics of World but with a faster, more aggressive approach of Rise? Check. A sound damage based offensive mechanic? Check. A counter option for the moveset? Check. While I might not have been a straight up psychic mind reader to get everything 100% right, what we're getting definitely aligns with the design approach I wanted to see. That's mainly why I decided to hold off on putting up this final part until we got our first look at the basic tools we'll have to work with. It's going to let us talk about where the weapon will find itself in the full game with a bit more context than the pure hypotheticals we were working with before. It's not too easy to find concrete information on the best horns the further you go back into Monster Hunter history. Around 4th gen is where the community really started laying out more well-known meta guides, and from what I've been able to find, 9 times out of 10,
it's raw. That's raw. It's still raw.
Yeah, the characteristics of all the top horns followed more or less the same formula. As a middling to slow speed weapon, element and status were pretty secondary compared to the more straightforward raw damage. Add the ever important attack up to that, and chances are all the best options had that song list and the highest possible raw stats for it to multiply. If, by some chance, you saw an elemental or status horn, it was most likely just there by coincidence and only served to just sprinkle on a few more points of damage. Take the Deviljho or Fatalis horns in World and Iceborne respectively, for example. Yeah, they had Dragon on them, but elemental weapons, they were not. They're more like raw stat beating stick that just let off fancy visual effects when you smack things with them. The further back you go into games like 3 Ultimate or Generations Ultimate, there are some notable exceptions. Like both the Abyssal Lagiacrus and Astalos horns having a perfect combination of good attack stats, good songs, and high thunder to pull them ahead versus more elementally weak monsters. Even with these though, it was more of a stars aligning moment than hunting horn's preferred stat spread and build approach changing. Using a raw focused weapon makes for a reasonably straightforward approach to the game. Set building becomes a lot easier when you can just build for one solid beating stick and then take on any monster you come across. No need to know what their weaknesses are and find the appropriate setup to best match that and maximize your damage potential, which most players kinda liked. Less farming, less research, less set swapping. Easy straight. For me though, needing to build more sets and weapons just means more monster hunting, and I like maxing out as much damage as I can. Hunting horn has only recently started branching out of a team raw weapon setup into being better with elemental builds. The advantage in Iceborne was admittedly small once Fatalis Manus Whaler dropped into our laps, bringing us right back to where we were in World with Deep Vero. Ridiculously good stats compared to everything else makes horns like that kinda hard to beat. It took elemental horns with even better stats, a fast hitting move with a new echo attack, and a bunch of strong elemental boosting skills to push another meta to the top. The same thing played out in Rise and Sunbreak, but this time Element had a clear and significant lead thanks to Silkbind Shockwave and the new moveset. That combination effectively made hunting horn a much faster hitting weapon than it had ever been before. It may sound like I'm talking up elemental overall here, and well, I kinda am. I really like the added variety you get out of having to match your gear to attack specific monster weaknesses, especially when, with Hunting Horn, it also has you using a wider selection of song lists. No more throwing a horn in the bin if it doesn't happen to have attack up. We saw elemental attack up horns, some healing ones, some utility and defensive ones. It was pretty nice. I wouldn't mind it if we kept the trend going in Wilds at all, but I think we sometimes forget that there's a third option: status horns. The best of those are essentially spicy raw weapons, dealing damage through your attack stat alone while also steadily applying special effects to monsters. Putting them to sleep, poisoning, paralyzing, and blowing them up. These are rarely the best of the best for any weapon type because in order to compensate for those special abilities, you're missing the extra damage that elemental weapons get and usually have lower attack than the pure raw weapons as well. On top of that, over the course of a hunt, monsters tend to build up resistances to statuses the more they're inflicted. There are some exceptions with good enough stats to make status an advantage more than a trade-off, like the Gold Rathian weapons in early Iceborne, well, for every weapon besides Hunting Horn, or some blast weapon or another, but for the most part they end up being somewhat gimmicky. Unless you're playing a ranged weapon, that is. Then you can just pop out multiple statuses easy and swap right back to top tier damage. I'm not salty, you're salty. But this isn't always the case. On the crafted weapon side in 4 Ultimate, Onyx Terpix score was in neck and neck with Makam's Sedition for the hardest hitting horn in that game. While the status was pretty low and it was rare you'd rock a monster to sleep more than once with the moveset we had to work with in that game, it was one of the few times we ever seen a status weapon be a top choice for us. Stronger but less common due to the sometimes rough times of RNG drop farming were the relic weapons. My 3DS and 4 Ultimate save were lost to time somewhere, but I do have some fond memories of pinning down monsters back to back with stuns and max paralysis. Before then, in 3 Ultimate, Slime almost barely counts because it was broken when it was first introduced, but 4th and 5th gen both had several good blast horns for stacking on that little bit of extra burst damage with added on explosions. Most recently, we have probably one of my favorite examples, the golden beauty that was Taroth Pipe's sleep in World of Iceborne. This amazing bagpipe was blessed with a ridiculous amount of sleep for the powerful raw stats it was rocking with, thanks to the requirement of it needing free element to unlock. Some might say that it made it even more effective to run with elementless decorations for even more straight raw power. I say elementless who? It's monster nap time. Who needs a few more digits worth of damage per hit when you could have constant chances to bounce monster heads off walls and set up max power impact deca wave wake ups instead? So yeah, element would be great, status would be really great, but what would we need to make those happen? Well, it comes down to 3 things: number distribution, attack rate, and gear options. The first might sound a little complicated, but it's really simple. Basically, when your weapon hits a target, what is the attack coded to do? Every attack deals raw damage, but the additional multipliers for element and status will determine how good each is for a weapon. For example, Elemental Hunting Horn was strong in Sunbreak because the extra hits from Sylvine Shockwave have a whopping 1.5 extra elemental damage multiplier compared to normal attacks. On the flip side, status didn't benefit nearly as much because it didn't apply any at all. Which is a shame because it could have been really useful when it came to our second factor, the attack rate. Generally, meaning aside from any weirdness with damage multipliers, the more often a weapon hits, the more element and status it applies. Iceborne and Sunbreak both displayed this by shifting the Hunting Horn meta to Elemental just by starting with adding more frequent hits to its moveset. If you line it up right, the Echo attack could hit up to 5 times where most other moves would have just landed once or twice. And the Silkbind Shockwave just doubled up Hunting Horn's attack speed overall with delayed sound waves. On the status side, this would also be important because status is applied on roughly 1/3 of all your attacks, so obviously the more attacks you land, the faster you'd be able to build towards an application. Lastly, there's the gear. As long as there are options with high element and ways to stack on a lot more, you've got a good chance at an elemental meta. Iceborne allowed for just that with several different element boosting set bonuses, on top of having some horns with really good stats and access to element boosting songs. Sunbreak gave us more or less the same, just with a lot more powerful endgame skills in place of set bonuses. Status, on the other hand, usually ends up just being built like raw weapons with maybe a few points in status attack up. But Sunbreak did throw us a bone by adding a few skills that benefit this type of playstyle for melee weapon users. Foray allowed you to deal extra damage to poison or paralyze monsters. Build-up boost increased your damage even more than on hits that applied status, which after activating status trigger with a successful dodge could be all of your hits. Slap in Adrenaline Rush for a further attack boost after a dodge and Blade Scale Hone to keep up your sharpness, you were really cooking. Before these, the only status related skills we got were the ones for higher status build-up, nothing to actually make the weapons themselves stronger. That's why, aside from a few exceptional options, they tended to lag behind in the damage department. If we keep these and or maybe get some more, builds for status weapons could be decent contenders. All we'd need then would be options with good stats, and we're golden. Now, I've already mentioned why I like the elemental focus for Hunting Horn, and honestly, this would be the best case scenario for its damage potential in the long run. We could get the numbers and the attack rates in our favor if all the extra sound damage attacks in the wild moveset have non-zero multipliers like most did in World and Iceborne. If we get that, all we'd need is skills and good weapons to be up and running. So why keep bringing up status? Well, consider Hunting Horn's role in this game. As Monster Hunter's resident team benefiting, multiplayer thriving weapon, it'd be nice and fitting to take this route and have it double as the game's best buffer and debuffer. While you boost yourself and your teammates, you'd also be weakening monsters in more ways than normal, whether it's by dealing extra chip damage with blast, slowly draining health with poison, giving 3 attacking windows with paralysis, and setting up moments for perfect burst damage with sleep only to have some random player wasted because they just won't stop attacking. Sorry, a bit of multiplayer flashbacks there. Where were we? Oh yeah, Hunting Horn is a debuffer. Barring any new songs or sound abilities for this purpose, this would help set Hunting Horn apart in a neat way. It already has KO and Exhaust going for it, so why not add a few more things? Of these, Poison and Exhaust are probably the weakest, so if we were to go down this route, I'd probably like to see those buffed in some way. There are a few monsters like Legiana and Kushala de Aura that are especially affected by poison, to the point that it makes them fight as if they're actively sick and or shuts down their abilities, which would be cool to see more often. Exhaust is famously rarely seen because of the way Rage Mode shuts it down and Elder Dragons aren't affected by it, but whenever you do see it, it has a notable impact. Monsters are left panting and drooling, stumbling over themselves, and failing to properly use their special attacks. If Hunting Horn could actually excel at this, it'd be an even more welcome sight in teams. And of course, this isn't just for team play because Hunting Horn isn't just for team play. Its reception in the community and results in solo would benefit as well. You can't apply status if you aren't consistently attacking, which would in turn encourage a more active offensive role over a more passive support mindset. No corner horns or pocket horns if Hunting Horn becomes well known for its monster locking crowd control abilities. Plus, with Echo Bubbles giving us a lot of damage potential if we keep monsters near them, and some good burst damage in Echo Wave Songs and Earthshaker, we definitely benefit from having multiple ways to ensure that we have a stationary target to wail on. Win-win no matter what gameplay setting you're in. To round this all out, we have to talk about where I'd like to see Hunting Horn rank among the other weapons. And surprising exactly no one, it's not anywhere near 12 to 14 out of 14. Should it be a top 5 weapon? As much as I'd love to see that, probably not. Not with all the built-in utility or my hopes for it being a strong status option. But bias aside of course, I kinda feel like there's more room for it to rise up in the ranks a bit. During Gamescom, the developers and some people in the know have said that there are plans in the works to bring Hunting Horn's damage potential more in line with other weapons.
Like with the addition of Echo Bubbles, which are such a massive buff as well, you need to, if you're actively using the Hunting Horn, you've got this incredibly, as you said, you can put 3 down there, and it not only adds to your DPS against the monster, but these buffs, like the one that we had in the build here, gives you evasion and movement speed. So, you know, it's not, you know, it's something you can absolutely main and do incredible stuff with.
This is great news because it kind of feels like Hunting Horn's offense has never really been a main focus until now. This is most likely an answer to it no longer having sole access to its own abilities, which would make sense. Like I said in the last video, if Hunting Horn isn't the only weapon using song buffs, it shouldn't be the only thing balanced for song buffs. Where exactly it'd fit among the other weapons I don't quite know at the moment, but consider this. If things stay the way we saw them in the demo, Hunting Horn has potential to do some crazy damage compared to everything else it could put out before, with one noticeable catch. Bubbles are everything. Crazy sentence, yeah, but it's kinda true. I mean, sure, the moveset got a nice tune-up, but if you aren't managing these properly, well, no extra sound waves on the regular attacks or large bursts on recitals for you. With our full damage output gated behind setup rather than the usual you hit the thing and the thing takes damage every other weapon is built on, I'd say that they could probably set that high end pretty high. Hunting Horn's becoming a sort of technical trick-based class between the buffs and the AoE-based special abilities, and I'm liking it. It'd be fitting that with something that takes skill, strategy, and perfect conditions to pull off just right, the kind of results it can expect to pull off should definitely match that effort. Again, for the sake of balance, they should hold it back just a bit. After all, we don't need our first chance at being decently competitive to be short-lived due to the calls of "Hunting Horn 2 OP, please nerf. No fair, my hammer can't buff and it deals less damage." I mean, it'd be a dream to finally be in that position of that overtuned weapon, even just for one title, but watch it be the one time the devs decided to immediately bring it back in line. I mean, remember with the Rise demo when it was getting the 3rd fastest kill times and immediately got hit with nerfs day 1? Yeah, best not to make too many waves too early. If I had to put a pin in it now, I think we'd be just fine with a comfy lower middle tier placement. But what do you guys think? Where would you like to see Hunting Horn land in Wilds when we finally get to go hands-on and really figure out where every weapon places? And what kind of horns do you want to see at the top for us? You know the deal. Start up a chat down in the comments and share this around so we can get a real conversation going. It's seeming like we didn't really end up getting much new gameplay during PAX West, which is unfortunate, but hopefully we'll see some new things soon. There are a bunch of events coming up this month, and with any luck Capcom might drop something on the YouTube or Twitter before then. Look out for it, you'll never know. Till then though guys, this has been another KPlays and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.